Okay, hey, thank you. Thank you for the folks at home, but really thank you for the folks here. It's your smiling faces that will really make this something really special for me. So thank you very much. And for all those at home, I appreciate you joining us as well. So for over 45 years, in addition to building and growing the largest residential employee-based painting company in the United States, and growing a consulting group with my brother Brian, we've got 175 clients that run a similar type of operation to Nolan Painting. In addition to that, I've been an endurance athlete, mostly a runner, not a particularly fast one, but one that just keeps on running. I've always enjoyed running a business and running. I think I like the discipline more than the actual running. The goal, the plan, the training, the finish. I planned and ran for over 20 years to complete a marathon in all 50 states. If discipline is remembering what you want, I wanted to finish what I started. Number 47, Ashton, Idaho. Number 48, Oklahoma. Number 49, Wyoming. I stood at the starting line of my 50th state in 2016, and it was raining, and it was windy, and it was cold. It was the perfect setup for suffering. 70 of my family and friends had come to cheer me on. And as I crossed the finish line, I had an out-of-body experience. I was looking down on the whole scene, and all my friends and all the crowd, they were cheering and they were clapping. And I was like screaming and crying and laughing, so many emotions, so much pain, so much suffering, so much joy and satisfaction. I thought, this is what it's like to hit your goals. That one moment, after 20 years of all that focus, this is the moment. Boy, you get really hooked on that feeling. Discipline and endurance go together. So endurance can be built over time, right? And to run a successful business or to run a marathon, you need endurance. You need a strong mind and you need a strong body. I had a lot of brutal years. Some folks in this crowd look to be the same ages as me. Does anybody remember the recession of 1990? I know it's considered to be a smaller recession and all the calamities and things that have happened in the world, but 1990 was pretty bad for me. I had just stretched pretty thin. I bought a second home. The first home was being used as my operations for the business. The second home was where I was moving my family. It was a dilapidated wreck because that's what I was looking for. I didn't do the money thing correctly. I ran out of money. I got in debt. I borrowed a lot of credit card debt and whatever other vehicles that would lend me money. I finished the house. And then I had 7 really, really tough years. 4 children. My wife stopped working. I went from good times to bad times and happy times. But the important thing is I learned a lot. I survived and I learned a lot from those experiences. And I also learned to create an operating system that I call organizational muscle. And then I was able to create the kind of business that creates some joy and satisfaction in my life as well. Who am I kidding? It's far more than joy and satisfaction. When your business runs the way that you dreamed and the way you want it to, and it runs well, it is one of the most gratifying experiences you'll ever have in your life. It is nirvana. Your business is running exactly the way you want. That's what an operating system can do. I wrote a book about it of the same name. It's called Organizational Muscle, and it's all the stuff you need to build a strong business that endures. Oops. There we go. It's available on Audible and Amazon, and I have some copies here for you today as well. What is an operating system? So it's the documented way you run your business. It's written down and it's shared, and people know what it is. It is no longer in the entrepreneur's head. It is now a document that people follow. Domino's and Starbucks have operating systems, pizza and coffee. The US Army and the NFL have operating systems. We actually use some of their operating systems in our business. Home Depot and Lowe's have competing operating systems. They are not the same. They're individual, they're proprietary, and they're going at it in the competitive world. Franchises are operating system. If you buy a franchise, you're buying a written operating system. Franchises are everywhere, and most of them thrive. Many small business owners do not have an operating system and struggle like I did, or don't really get a chance to experience that feeling of nirvana that I was talking about before, because they don't have a written operating system. Mostly it's kept in somebody's head. And we know that that's not a permanent state. So it organizes knowledge, people, activity, money, time, resources. Everything is organized, written down, and shared, so everybody knows what's happening. It's easy to understand. It's like a game where everybody wins. It provides consistent, predictable results with levers to make changes. When I say levers to make changes, I mean when it's running, you can change different parts of it and then see different results. You can raise prices, you could have a contest internally, you could do a marketing campaign. These are the different levers. And when you understand the opportunities, you can take advantage of it. So I know running is an endurance sport, and it can seem like a lonely sport, but when I run in a group with a group of people, whether it's hundreds or thousands in the New York Marathon, I think of it as all of us together running in the same direction as fast as we can, like a herd. But first, the problem, the hourglass. No one really uses an hourglass anymore except to play a board game. And they show up in little places like when you're waiting for a program to load on your computer or something along those lines. So it usually means that we're waiting. We're waiting for, as Dr. Seuss says, we're waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or waiting for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. But everybody's just waiting. I don't know about you, but I've never been very patient for the waiting game. But I found myself being the person that was making everyone wait. Often people were waiting for me to make a decision, or they were just waiting for me to show up. I like to take pictures in nature of different things that remind me of aspects of running a business. Obviously, like most business owners, I have it on my mind all the time. Does anybody else see an hourglass there? With a grain of sand stuff. That's the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And when I looked up and saw that, I thought, there's the hourglass again. But when I talk about the hourglass, I mean being stuck in the hourglass, where all the sand is all the decisions and all the problems that me, the owner, the founder, feels necessary to respond to. And I'm stuck there, and everybody's waiting for me. I think of how I used to paint a house, and then I would be working on the house, and then I would stop working to go do something else, and the house would not get finished until I went back to work. And then later, when I would hire a crew, we'd be working on the house, and then when I would need to go do an estimate, the house and the work would slow down or almost stop. And I began to realize that the concept of multitasking and single focus tasking are two different things, as we all know. But when you hire a painter to paint your house, you want single focused tasking on the house. And that isn't what the job of the CEO or president or leader of the company is anymore. So I began to realize that hiring people to do single focused tasks while I went off and did other tasks was the way to go. But the problem was it was like an organizational chart with the words me in every box. Me, the salesperson, me, the manager, me, the estimator, me, the banker, me, the person that's supposed to take care of the bookkeeping. And I'm doing it all pretty poorly. When it was like that for me, I remember coming home from work and I would try to greet my wife, who was managing 4 children under 5. And she was very harried. And after a few minutes, I realized why. I would help out with bedtime routines and dinner and bedtime routines, and then get them to bed. Then I'd go to my desk and I'd try to get in an hour or two before I was exhausted, and I would try to, pay some bills or write some invoices or write some estimates. I'd make a list for the next day, and I was pretty sure I was forgetting things, so I was pretty stressed out. And the next day, I'd have to start a house in the morning with a power washer, drop someone off, set a power washer up, then go to another house that was already in progress, where I was the person that was to spray it all. So I would spray the house, 3 or 4 hours, spray it, and then I would go to another job where there was a windowsill that needed replacement, and I was the carpenter as well. And then I would stop on the way home to do an estimate. And I remember one night, a lady let me into her foyer to look at her inside paint job, and she said, "You smell right." And, I never got that job. And I made sure that never happened again. But those type of things you never forget. When you realize that you're not pulling it off, that you're not doing it. And a lot of times you're in that waiting place and everybody's just waiting for something to happen. And there's a lot of negativity that's in your head. Things like, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. We've all heard this. And constantly calling yourself an idiot and stupid for making mistakes. I can't hire anybody good. I'm sick and tired of. So nobody cares what you're sick and tired of or who you're sick and tired of. They've all got their own problems, and most people are not focused on yours. And then being overwhelmed. If you tell someone you're overwhelmed, not only will they lose faith in you, but in fact, you lose faith in yourself, and it won't solve the problems. The things that I learned about negative self-talk was the 3 C's, which is to catch yourself doing it, and then determine if it was actually real or not. Is this real? Is it true that you are an idiot? Well, sometimes. Is it true that you can't hire anybody? That's not true. So then you correct it. And you come up with a new way of thinking about it. The 3 C's: catch it, check it, and correct it. And I find myself still doing that day to day. Does any of you have a negative thought and you realize, I need to change this. This won't get me where I need to go. Walking around telling people you're overwhelmed will not get you where you need to go. So it's human nature, but I think if you catch it, then you can correct it. So one day in 1997, I went to see somebody who was actually at the time even older than I am now. So it just shows you how much impact you can have at any age. You've heard of Zig Ziglar? Any of you? So he was with a group of other speakers in the lineup, and he came on at the very end. And I remember he walked around the stage, he was pacing, and then he went up to the edge of the stage, and he put his knee down, and he stared out into the audience, and he looked at me 20 rows back. And he said, "You can have anything you want in the world if you help others get what they want. Right to me." I said, "Thanks, Zig." It changed my life. It totally changed my life that minute. I opened up to a whole new way of thinking. I needed to build something that people wanted to be a part of. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about helping other people get what they want. You can get what you want if you help other people get what they want. When practiced correctly, it becomes a superpower. I also then continued to read books. Actually, not read books. I actually listened to books. So I was a pretty poor student at college because it required a lot of reading, and I wasn't a strong reader. And it wasn't until the mid-90s that I discovered books on tape, and then later turned into books on CD, and now obviously books on Audible. But all of a sudden, I started gobbling up books, 20 to 50 books a year, because when the student was ready, the teacher appears. I was ready. I had a lot of problems. When I read First Break All the Rules, at the time, I probably had 30 or 40 employees, and it was a bit of a mess. And there were the instructions on how to run a company. And I was able to implement those immediately. In fact, you know, I think about reading books all the time, even now. I ask somebody, I say, do you read books? And have you read any books? And they go, no, I do podcasts. And I think to myself, oh, like you read magazine articles. Everybody thinks that podcasts are the way to learn. And they are, they're snippets. But you can't learn in podcasts what you know in some of these books, like the E-Myth. You have to do that deeper dive. I was at a conference last week where the theme of the conference was a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. What an amazing book. But anyway, so I bought the book in January. I literally drove across the country with it in my briefcase. And then I actually flew back once and then back again. And then I drove back across the country with it in my briefcase. And then I flew to Florida with it in my briefcase. So we're about 10,000 miles now. And I still hadn't read it. I had it with me for, I don't know, 6, 8 weeks. So finally, 2 weeks ago, I got it on Audible, and I've listened to it 2.5 times since then. So for all you folks that don't necessarily read, it just shows you the power of listening, which is right up the alley for most entrepreneurs because they want to multitask. There are many other good books. These first came to mind. So, operating system. Today we're going to focus mostly on the core muscles, maybe a couple of top tier muscles as well. But the core muscles in this operating system and in most operating systems would be the vision, mission, and values. People join and stay with organizations for this. And this is what we'll talk about. And then we'll talk a little bit about talent and leadership. And then there's other top tier muscles that I described in the book: money, meaning, marketing, training, safety, problem solving, and decision making. I had a system on it all, through it all. And then maintaining mental and physical balance through it all. Any good athlete knows that all the gains happen during the rest. You go out, you exercise, you tear down your muscles, and then you rest. And that's where the gains come. So we need to make sure that we have mental and physical balance as we're building this company. And that becomes sort of a secondary value to our company. So I started my business without a plan. And I started my life without a plan. In 1981, I graduated from Villanova. And 3 weeks later, I got married. We had no money, but we got some wedding money. So we had a VW Beetle. First mistake, I should have sold the Beetle and bought a van, which would have been helpful later in life. Would have also made the trip more pleasant. But we went to Kmart and we bought a tent and some sleeping bags. I had no plan. I was a free spirit, like a hippie kind of guy. And I didn't know how to paint though. So anywhere I went, I could paint houses. So my lovely wife at the time, and she's still my wife now, but we drove across country and we headed out west with no plan. And then we made a left turn on the Blue Ridge Parkway Still no plan. It was nice. We figured we'd head in that direction. And then we made it all the way to New Orleans. And then in New Orleans, the engine on the VWG blew. Actually, just outside of New Orleans, in the lovely suburb of Slidell, in a state park. So we were there in the state park for 3 weeks without a vehicle and no home. And my wife wasn't terribly happy with the whole situation. I know at one point I reached to give her a hug and say it's going to be okay, and she said, "Don't touch me, it's hot." And I'm in the South in the middle of July, and I'm in a state park. It's raining. I have no home. That's what you get when you're a free spirit. You find yourself in those type of situations. Still having not learned enough about it yet, but we did make it all the way to California, and with the new engine, and we were in California with $100 and a can of beans. That's what we had left. I had sent for all the money, the wedding money, and used it to put the engine in. And I was too proud to tell my dad that any of this had happened because he had told me it was going to happen. And so I didn't want to tell him. So we meandered our way back to Colorado, but then finally my wife convinced me to head straight back to Philly because we were out of money and she really didn't want to live any other place anyway. And I thought maybe somewhere along the way we might have called it a place a home, but she's a Philly girl, and so I started my business back again, and this was now 1981, 2 years later after I'd originally started it in college. 2 years later, I was back to painting houses on the main line right in here. So the whole idea of having a vision for where you're going on a trip or what you're doing for your business still hadn't really arrived to me until that fateful day when I met Zig Ziglar and the pieces started to come together. I mentioned the book, The E-Myth. I read The E-Myth, and there's a passage in there about the primary aim, writing a primary aim for yourself. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I think it's important to understand the difference between a primary aim and a vision for your life, and then what ultimately becomes your business plan. They're two different documents, and I'm going to start with the primary aim. So writing a letter to your future self, date certain, and looking at things in your life, like your relationships, how you are physically, financially, your hobbies, bucket lists, and achievements. So over the last 20 years, I've written probably about 20 of these type of documents. It's pretty easy with word processing. You just jump on a Word doc and start writing a letter to yourself, date certain in the future. It turns out it's an extremely powerful way to guide your life. So when I write these personal letters to myself, they always say happily married, because I want that to be a priority. They always talk about my family and how important that is to me, because that's a priority. By the way, it's very easy to forget these priorities in other times of our life or under stress. But I talk about things like running a marathon in all 50 states or doing an Ironman. I talk about doing exercise. I talk about saving money, putting money away. I talk about buying real estate or selling real estate. And then, of course, I look to develop outside interests. And I do these every couple of years. They're not always secretaries. They don't always connect to each other. They simply are me projecting in the future as an exercise. It's really not even as important when they end, although it has to be date certain, as the fact that it sends you on a direction or trajectory. So, for instance, right now, I have one that actually will expire this July. And it was written 3 years ago to discuss me leaving the company, Nolan Painting, after 45 years. It's going to be emotionally pretty tough delete this thing that I've built. But by practicing on paper what my life will look like and what I want it to look like, and directionally moving in that direction, I can start to emotionally and financially and physically be ready to deal with it. I've written them to include business interests as well. For many years, I was very, very focused on hitting $10 million in revenue, and that was a recurring primary aim because it was a business goal that was still very important to what I wanted to achieve in life. So writing this down, and I'll be referring to it later, writing this down is probably the single most important guiding tool I've ever used to keep me moving in a very focused direction. Because a lot of entrepreneurs call themselves ADD or something along those lines. They can't focus. And that may be true. I don't know. I know I never was diagnosed, but I've certainly had a focus problem. And writing a good primary aim and doing this regularly has been really like a life-changing event for me. I always offer to folks, if they send me a primary aim that they write 3 years down the road, for 5 years down the road, share it with me. I'll share you my latest one. And don't get as many takers as I'd like, but I can tell you if you practice it, you'll be rewarded. So now the annual business plan. Once the entrepreneur, the owner, the small business owner commits to what is necessary, the discipline that's going to be required to run a business and do what it's taken to grow an organization, then they write a 1-year and 3-year vision. You can do a 5 and a 10-year vision as well, but a 1 and 3-year vision written out and shared with the entire company. This is how you get buy-in from folks. They think, here's a great vision. Here's an opportunity for me to be a part of a company that is looking to grow, that's creating new positions, that has opportunities for me. And I really think that a leader has to be super, super clear that that's one of their major roles, is to have this really strong, articulated vision that is all-inclusive and creates lots of opportunities for folks. And then you can throw in a SWOT analysis, which is just more like a brainstorming session of all your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then deciding in that list and in that vision that you produced, what are the big items that you're looking to achieve in the new year. There are obviously some other ways you can add to a business plan. Our business plan is probably 20 pages and has financials as well. But that's the basics of it. And this is what we put together and call a 1-page business plan. And we share it with all of our employees. We have about 140 employees now. And we share it with all of our employees and anybody that will listen. I share it with bankers, I share it with vendors, I'll share it with employees and potential employees. So it really becomes the reason people see opportunity for themselves in an organization. And by making it abundantly clear, it creates a lot of value. And it's really important to look at the opportunities that exist. Anybody ski in the trees? So it seems like a crazy thing to be able to do. You look into the trees and you're thinking, I'm going in there and I'm going to ski in between those trees. And to be honest with you, it's not as difficult as it looks. You have to be able to ski. But the important thing is to look at the spaces between the trees. Literally, your body goes where your eyes go. And if you're looking at the trees, you're going to hit a tree. If you look at the spaces between the trees, you're going to make it through. So when you're doing the vision, you're putting in things that you want to see, and then you're making them happen. Got to be real. They've got to be attainable. They've got to be SMART goals. But you put it out there. It's about developing that vision so that other folks can see that future as clearly as you do. As the leader, it's important to work on these developing tools. Here again, we go back to the primary aim. You're practicing on paper with your life so that then when you put it on paper for your business, it's all that much more organized and centered and focused. And you're basically telling the story, and it's focused and it's clear, and people say, that person knows where we're going, and I'm confident in that person. Tale of two visions. I'll tell you the first one, which is a successful one. In 2018, I had a vision that we would buy a high-reach piece of high-reach equipment every year. They're about $100,000 a piece, give or take. And so I thought once a year, I'm going to buy a new piece of high-reach equipment. And I wrote this all out in a business plan. And sure enough, that was taken recently, and we achieved our goal in 5 years and have 5 high reaches. In addition to these 5 high reaches, we rent 3 or 4 more. I have a dedicated driver who delivers them all day. We're like the only contractors in the Delaware Valley, really, or anywhere, where one of these machines will show up to do all your high work. It's safer, it's far more productive, and it creates a differentiation between us and our competitors. I will tell you that I had another vision that same year. It rained a lot in 2018, and I had a vision of building a program where we would cover houses in tents so I could paint in the rain. That never came true. But this one did. Most people forget about that one, the other idea. That was like an Elon Musk idea. At the time, Elon Musk was building cars in tents because his factories were being finished. And so I thought I'd take a page from his book. All of his ideas don't work out either, buddy. But this one did. This is what people remember me for. They were like, "That was a good idea you had then," and they can forget about the mission. Super important. Often skipped in businesses. They skip this step completely, which is what's their mission. This is really what's defined us. Like for instance, we're very people-centered, and we only do residential painting. Those are keys. That is missed by most companies. They do anything that comes down the pipe. We focus on our core values, our core business. What do you do? Why do you do it? How do you do it? And who's your customer? So ours is to preserve and protect surfaces and relationships, to provide the utmost in professional painting in a prompt, friendly, honest manner, to enjoy the benefits of a job well done, and to be the best in the business. And we have everybody on board with that. That was created by a group of people that met every Friday morning back in 1998. And those same folks are still with me now and part of the management team because they bought in. And I certainly directed it, but they were the ones that were buying in. And then I knew I was doing the right thing. So here was me in 1979, just starting the business. And the only problem I had was I did not have a car. So I didn't deserve this because I hadn't been a particularly good student, and I hadn't matured as much as my dad wanted me to. But he did lend me the family car. Pretty amazing. The deal was that I had to drive my dad back and forth to the train station in Long Island. This is where I live, in Long Island. Back and forth to the train station every morning and every afternoon. So I drop him off at 7 a.m., pick him up at 7 p.m. My dad was an attorney in New York City. And during the ride back and forth, he would teach me about writing contracts and hitting punch lists, making sure I finished jobs, making sure I asked customers directly, are you happy with the job? He'd also talk to me about keeping the car clean. About the car, he'd say, just make sure when I get in it, it has gas and that it's cleaner than when you got it. Those words stuck with me. Can you imagine having the opportunity to ride back and forth with a lawyer and talk about all the problems that you were having for a half hour every day? It turned out it was incredibly transformative for me. Once again, the student was ready and the teacher was there. So I remember at the end of the summer, I had a group of people working for me, and Terry was a friend, and he was not respectful of my parents' car, my dad's car. So I said, Terry, I'm not going to have you come back next year. I remember that was the first time I ever made a decision about hiring based on values, and it was not the list. So values are great. Every company should have values. There's lots of values. Almost all values are good. But I think it's important to pick like 4 key values and make sure that they are discussed up on the wall, lived on documents, and mentioned at every meeting. In our company, it's transparency, accountability, to be a best place to work, and to do everything in a friendly way. The interesting thing about this picture is that this is only a couple of years ago, but 3 out of the 4 are no longer with the company. That's not unusual. We experience a turnover business. Brian, the last one, he's great. He's a superstar. But the other 3 have come and left, and as has others. But while they were working for us, they were renting or borrowing our values. Not the other way around. They were using our values. Many of them left with some of that value still in them. But while they were working for us, it was our value system. So there are no other values allowed in the company. There's no other culture allowed in the company other than the ones that we create. So our value system is that strong that we can make sure our folks are following it. At every single meeting, I talked about this before, at every single meeting, we are talking about vision, mission, values. I'm leaving the company at the end of this year, and my president, John Meyer, is now conducting most of the meetings. And I say to him, remember, it's vision, mission, values, repeat. And that's what it really comes down to. I think of it as being like that, I don't really know anymore, but on the back of a shampoo bottle, it says lather, rinse, repeat. It does say that. You've got a nice full head of hair. When do you stop? I just keep doing it, right? Well, that's what it's like. I hate to say it's that simple, but a lot of it is that simple. It's just repeating it over and over again and using it as a filter for all these decisions that keep coming up. I have a list of values to pick from, sample business plan, and some meeting documents at this website that you can go to. I also have a blog that comes out on Thursdays, and you can order the book there as well. So there's a team this past summer, all lined up. Very, very proud, all employees, no subcontractors, all have health insurance, all have 401ks, part of our value system. A lot of family members, 4 children, 2 brother-in-laws, couple of nieces and nephews, and but more importantly, we run it like a family business. Everybody is family. We're treating everybody like family. We're not treating family better. We're treating everyone like family. But, what do employees want? That's the big question. When I talked before, by the way, most of these people are still with us. Yes, I always check these pictures to see who's come and gone. But I really think that most employees want this. They want to be trained in a skill. Okay, they don't want to be told they're no good. They want to be trained in a skill. They want a good boss or supervisor. That is the number one thing. We all know the number one reason why people quit their jobs. They don't like their boss. Their boss doesn't have to be me. Everybody loves me. It could be the person that I hired to manage them. maybe that person's not so nice. That's my responsibility, part of the value system. They have to have a good supervisor and a good boss. That's the person that cares about them. That's the person that wonders why things are happening differently. Why are you running late these days? Is there something going on? That's what a good boss does. They're empathetic. They understand what's happening in the person's life and what person is showing up that day. Doesn't mean they put up with nonsense. It means they show empathy, caring. People want the tools to succeed. You can be sure that when we got those high reach equipment, that was a tool to succeed. People are proud that we have that. They feel safer and they can do a better job. But beyond that, it's just, how does this company present? Do they show up with the right tools to succeed and get it done right? Always a priority for us. We're looking for opportunity for growth, praise and recognition, obviously structure and security. That's why I always focus on making sure that we had health insurance, and that we didn't have a subcontractor model, that we focused on actual people's safety and security. And then they are looking for money. Money is important, but it's not the most important thing. It actually is really mostly important when you're not paying enough and people are upset. Then it becomes very important. But if you get the compensation right, then all these other things really take precedent. So here's 5 big picture ways to build your team. When I find someone extraordinary, I've gone out of my way to make sure that they knew it, that I told them it, and that I took care of them and did exactly what Zig told me to do. So the really super success story, and I have lots of them in this area, is my CFO. My CFO started with me as a apprentice level 1 with no skills at all, and is now the CFO of one of the largest residential painting companies in the country. And I just realized that he was incredibly smart, and I started to promote him and move him up, and it turned to be one of the best things I ever did, because he made he was smarter than me in many areas. That single focus testing on financials, he could do that. I couldn't. It was a game changer for me. Also, Colin, when I hired Colin, he was a painter, and I realized that he had some good leadership skills. I just observed it. And so I decided one day that I was going to put Colin in charge of the whole field, and things immediately got better. Here I am spreading that hourglass, making it wider. Then later I hired John Meyer, and he was a salesman from a paint company, and I had him come over, and he was selling paint jobs for us. And I thought it was something special that only I could do, sell paint jobs, but it turns out that he charged more money, gave more hours, followed up better, had a higher closing rate. In all of the sales categories, he was better than I was. The guys used to say, we don't want a Kevin job, we want a John job. It's going to be a better job. It's going to be more detailed, more organized. Boy, that is really humbling. And then unfortunately, it took me years to realize that I should probably not sell at all anymore and focus on running the company. Yeah, now we have 8 salespeople, something that only I could do. What a joke. When you find these extraordinary folks, you need to basically latch onto them and create that future that we're talking about. I often talk to them about what life's going to be like for them in 3 to 5 years, how much money they could be making. So look for those people, and then provide recognition, praise, and purposeful work. We all know how it's supposed to go. Dale Carnegie told us to praise in public and criticize in private. Using opportunities to praise and provide gratitude at every single meeting. Every single meeting, it's the same thing. Mission, vision, values. Provide praise and gratitude. Okay, we got the formula for a lot of meetings here. And then pay well and tell folks how to earn more. And we also have a very lucrative pay for performance program where virtually every individual in our company benefits as we make profits, all written down, all shared, a pay for performance program. But I talk to folks and say, how much would you like to earn? And no boss has ever asked them that before. And then say, how can we get you there? How can we help get you to your goals? So nobody gets up in the morning and thinks, how can I get Kevin Nolan rich? But I get up in the morning and think about how I could get other people rich. It's a really interesting way to achieve success. And it's fun and supportive. Invest in human resources. So I learned this lesson way too late. I had about 70 employees and I had lots of human resource problems. But we were managing them until Homeland Security came and really put a hurting on us. We were fined $155,000 for minor I-9 violations. I was saying before, my two sons didn't present the proper ID at time of hire. So we had $1,000 fine for each one of those. My CFO didn't have one either, an I-9. I didn't have one, but it's before I-9s were invented. So, we had lots of little fines, a few employees that were not properly documented, and we had 100,000 plus fines. Eventually it was negotiated down, lots of legal fees as well. The whole thing was very, very expensive. And then finally, I hired my daughter from another company to take over HR. And when I think of how many years I wasted in the world not having strong, robust HR, and how I missed opportunities to recruit, not to mention about compliance, but just the recruiting opportunities and the care and feeding of all the folks. So I always tell companies to do that sooner. There's a company called Team Clean. Have you heard of Team Clean? They have 700 employees. They clean the Wells Fargo Center and the Link and all that. And so Donna Ali is the president, CEO. And I asked her, I said, well, how do you get from 70 employees time to 700? That's what she had. And she said 2 words: human resources. So it was too late when I finally learned that, but I learned it now. So, and then hire slow and fire fast. Has anybody heard of that before? Yeah. So I know that sounds kind of rough, but when we hire slow. We go through a process, 2 interviews, interview questions, and then we do a background check, and then we do a vehicle driving check, and then we do a reference check, and then we hire them. And then if they work out over the next 2 weeks, everything's great. But if we decide in the first 2 weeks that they're not a good fit, or any time, then we fire fast. Nobody likes to work with somebody who is in a bad attitude and in a bad place, side by side. And so it can really create that cancer we hear about in organizations, that rotten apple. So we fire pretty fast, particularly in that introductory period. We have a thing we call the behavior profile. It's called the Green Book. And after the first 2 weeks, we fill out the form, and we're looking to give them smiley faces in all behavioral things. So smiling, willingness to learn, uses safety, punctual, friendly to customers, all the behavioral pieces. And if we get that right, then we promote them to the next level. So to get that right means they get a smiley face in each one of those categories. If they get a frown face, like let's say the frown face would be in appearance. Well, we may give them a belt, or we may tell them they need to put on a pair of decent trousers. We'll provide the shirts, but we might be able to clean up the appearance. But if they're not willing to follow directions, that's not going to be a fit. And we need to make a decision quickly. And that's where fire fast comes in. So we had somebody last week who got fired on the second day of the job before any write-ups were done, right? So usually like to have a little write-up, like to know what's happening out there, a little bit of interaction with the superior supervisor, and we would write up what behaviors were, and then we would let them go. But That individual was let go. They were considered to be a bad value fit immediately. And then, of course, the next day they went on and called the main office and ranted and raved and said a lot of nasty things on the phone. Clearly not a behavioral fit. So my team understands what we're trying to do here. We're trying to grow and get people, but they have to be the right behavior fit. Cascading leadership. So leadership in general, I call it cascading leadership. Leadership in general is a muscle. It's something that we're working on. We're talking about it. We have written documentation and training about it. We have something called leadership competencies that we're training folks in. It's a real live muscle. It's written about, it's documented and shared. I often think about it like a waterfall. And the concept is that the water is starting at the top of the company and is flowing down, and everybody is getting soaked with the mission, the vision, and the values. And that it's leadership at every level. So every level where you're going down, you're getting leadership to folks below you. It does require a hierarchical structure, which I'll explain in a minute. But so I'm into waterfalls. So a little brief travel here on waterfalls, just a couple quick pictures, just to brighten it up. Ricketts Glen. Ricketts Glen is not far from here. There's 23 waterfalls in a 4-mile hike. So if you get a chance to go to Ricketts Glen, it is amazing. That's just one of them. There I was a couple of weeks ago, hiking in the rain in Zion National Park. And those waterfalls don't exist unless it's raining. They're just trickles. They don't exist as falls. It's just water running down. But when it's raining, they are. I mean, there's 3 of them in that picture. There's a frozen waterfall from last year. I just couldn't resist that one. That's a frozen waterfall in Alaska. And that's New Zealand. In that fjord, there are 1,000 plus waterfalls. It's called Milford Sound. Really beautiful. So anyway, back to waterfalls and back to what we mean. So cascading leadership, it all starts and goes down. Everybody knows the mission, vision, and values. And we can start to behave as a unit, as a team. Cascading communication, that's a real thing we talk about in the company all the time. At meetings, we say, please cascade this information down. That means your job is to tell all of your subordinates below you what is happening. And I always say, do it in context, meaning tell everybody why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, we're very transparent, so we're talking about it a lot, but we're actually relying on this as a tool. So if somebody doesn't know, it's because someone didn't tell them, and that means that that person is not doing their job. When you have these 2 things in place, you can practice what's called decentralized command. And this really is the secret to running a tight ship. Once again, everybody knows the mission, vision, values. Everybody has been trained. So, I think about it like when I used to train my 4 children to drive. So they got their permit, we head over to the high school, off hours, we drive around the parking lot. Then next week or so later, we head out into some of the main roads. And then finally we end up on the highways. And then maybe we'd have them drive for us on a 2 or 3 hour trip. And then I felt pretty comfortable, each one of them, that they knew how to drive. And when they passed their tests, I'd give them the key to the spare car and let them, use it to go to work or what have you. It's because I put the training in. I watched them. I observed them. I now was comfortable. I can practice something called decentralized command. I know that you'll do the right thing. And the Army is built on this. If you think about what the Army does, they do this, the US Army or the Marines or any of the branches, they do this in 3 months. They train people and then they send them around the world. And they give them high-powered weapons and a lot of responsibility. So it can be done. And then extreme ownership. To us, anybody read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink? So terrific book. I incorporated a lot of the military structure into our company after reading that book, realizing that the military is a perfect hierarchy. Everybody has about 6 people that report to them, and everybody knows what their job scope and responsibility is. And so, extreme ownership means, it means you're responsible for everything in your world, meaning, all the people that work for me, I'm responsible for them. And, it goes up and down through the organization. It means not making excuses, only solving problems, not looking to blame anybody, but to pick up the responsibility. And then teaching emotional intelligence, critical. I could do a whole seminar on emotional intelligence. We're teaching people how to handle emotions in themselves and in others. Really, really critical and super important. I hate to gloss over it, but I'm gonna for time. But it's it has run through our whole company for the last Daniel Goleman wrote the book in 1992. I think I might have discovered it in 1996. And so it's had that big of impact for all these years. Back to the military. So in a short period of time, they're training folks, they're working together as a team, they're creating tight teams, they're creating relationships and camaraderies of people working closely together. Lots and lots of structure. We have copied a lot of that structure in our work. We have all these various titles for a paint company. And there's more, but these are just the general field and the administrative titles. But we have an apprentice level 1 in our company. You're an apprentice level 1 for 90 days. You have to graduate from that. And if you can't graduate from that, then you're not a good fit and we'll ask you to be successful someplace else. But we'll do it in a friendly way, because friendly is one of our values. Then you have the balance of 1 year in the A2 apprentice level 2 category. Lots of training, lots of curriculum, lots of on-the-job training. You have 9 more months, so a total of 1 year from starting our company to make it to painter. And once again, if you're not a good fit, we will probably give you a 1 month furlough, but you'll need to get on board because we need you to be a professional painter in 1 year, and we've proven it can be done. That would just be painter level 1, which means they can work unsupervised into the future by themselves for a little while. And then if they get very proficient, they move up to painter level 2. Master painter would be many years experience. And then we get into a leadership thing here. We have job leaders, crew leaders, field managers, and then ultimately the vice president or COO. So very, very tight hierarchy where everybody knows, where they belong and where they fit and where they're going. And the same thing happens internally, administrative coordinators, managers, directors, and vice presidents. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the only way to manage structure where people know exactly what their responsibilities are. Regular promotions and pay raises. Every single month, we review every team in our company. And we have 4 teams, we're about to go to 6. But we review these teams and we give out pay raises and promotions. So people aren't waiting. We're very proactive, particularly in these uncertain times recently where it's been hard to find people and people would jump ship for $1. We are being proactive. But here's the key thing. Have you heard of the Peter Principle? So that's where you promote somebody to the level of their own incompetence, right? Sort of a natural thing. So they're decent at a job, and so they get promoted to the next job up. So, like for instance, if you are a good painter, and you got promoted to a job leader, so that would be very normal to hop over to master painter. Master painter this is what I do for the rest of my life. But a painter 1 or a painter 2 might hop over that and go right to job leader because they show some aptitude for it. So what we do now is we put them in that job for 90 days with all the responsibility and without the promotion or the pay raise. And if they do it for 90 days and they're doing a good job at it, they know what to expect. And we basically then reward them with that pay raise. So you get a raise in your pay for your performance, not just because you want it. That's how you get it by actually doing it. And some people decide this isn't for me. I don't need the responsibility. I can't handle it, all this responsibility, and no harm, no foul. They can go back to being painter level 2 and maybe eventually settle into a master painter. So everybody has a home and everybody basically has some opportunity to be recognized. We recognize master painters. We think it's a noble place to be in our company, is to be a master painter. So everybody has a position and is recognized for that position. And so once again, just to lay it all out, organizational chart. At this stage of the game, my name is not in every one of those boxes, which is wonderful. Only at the top. And John Meyer, that salesman I told you about, he will be promoted to CFO of the CEO in September. Now his on the job training is not 90 days, it's 9 months. So CEO is a little bit more of a job description, so we'll give you some more time to get there. Concept called time span. Has anybody heard of time span? It's the ability to work unsupervised into the future. So it's written by somebody named Elliot Jocks, and the book is called Requisite Corporation. It's a little heavy. That's all you need to know, what I told you. Is that people basically have a time span, how much they can handle before they need to be supervised again. So when we hear somebody new, we need to be next to them the whole time. We need to be supervised constantly. But as they move up and you start to witness time span, more time span, they can handle more. Now we can leave them and check back on them in 90 minutes. And see how they're doing, make a little correction if we need to. But the thing about time span is people get to a certain level, and either because they don't want to, or because they don't have the capacity to, they hit some limitation. You know, not everybody's an astronaut going to the moon, okay? So there are time span limitations along the way, but it can be developed over age. That same silly guy that drove across the country with no plan doesn't do that anymore. I just drove across the country. I told you about it. I planned for 6 months. Okay, everything was organized and well planned out ahead. Obviously, my time span increased. Doing those visioning exercises, that'll increase your time span. But once again, not everybody has the capacity or the desire. But I think it's important as you're promoting people to understand the concept of time span, because you need those worker bees. You don't treat those worker bees poorly because they didn't perform at a high level in a high level role. You find the right role, right? What Jim Collins calls getting the right person on the right seat on the bus. You find the right role for them, and then you respect and value them in that role because you understand their time span. That's part of your responsibility as the leader, is to know that and understand that. So there's the org chart for the office or the staff. There's one for the field, below each of these job leaders. So we talk about these job leaders. They'll run anywhere from 3 to 4 people each. So they're kind of like sergeants, lieutenants, and then like majors, and then the general up there. But in most cases, nobody has more than 6 people reporting to them, because it's hard to give the leadership to more than 6 people. It's hard to support more than 6 people, and to make sure that they're doing this well as we want them to. But all of the painters, 1, 2s, apprentices are all down here with opportunities as we expand out. These teams here now are growing, and we publish and update this routinely with the geographic locations, and we share this with all of our employees. You saw earlier, one of our values is transparency. So it's important to show them what the company looks like and where they can meet. As I wrap up, I do want to talk about balance and keeping in balance. I mentioned it earlier. Entrepreneurs naturally are going out of balance. They are naturally trying and going way out of balance and then coming back. I know that for me, the marathon could sometimes be out of balance. When I first started doing the marathons, I did, one or two a year. And then I think the second to last year, I did 9 in 1 year. At one point I did one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. And the next weekend I did one on a Saturday. And the following week I did one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. I did 5 in less than 30 days, which made me eligible for something called the Marathon Maniac. So I was maniacal. And I didn't always behave the way I should because I was out of balance. Quick story. I ran the 2000 Hawaii Marathon. I wasn't even a 50-stater yet. This was a marathoner. And so it was hot. And it's my second or third marathon, and I expected to do very well, and I didn't. And I ended up walking a lot, and I finished it on 3 hours and 58 minutes. At the time, that was slow for me. I'd take it now, but I mean, and I was with my wife, my friend, and finished. I was moping about it. Yeah, it turned out the moping lasted a few days, and they stopped here. So she basically was done with the whole marathon thing right then and there. And then about 15 years later, I was going to do the Louisiana Marathon. It's going to be my 33rd state. And I convinced my friend to come with me. I promised her I'd be good and I wasn't going to get overworked up about it. So I went out. That morning I got a bike. They had a bike at the Airbnb we were staying at. And I biked it to the start of the race 5 miles away. And then I ran the race and I started coming in with the half marathoners. And as I was crossing the finish line with the half marathoners, I realized I just completed a half marathon. That's not what the game was. The game was a marathon. So they were about to put the medal on me. I was like, no, don't do that. I turned around, I ran back, I got on the course, and I ended up really hot, ended up walking. And it was 4 hours and 50 minutes, my worst marathon ever. But it was 28.5 miles. And on top of it all, I was disqualified. Oh man. I thought I'm going to be back to Louisiana again, I guess. Anyway, I got my act together, got on the bike, I rode home, and it was about 10:30 in the morning, and Mary Fran was just getting up, and she was having a cup of tea on the porch. And she said, "How'd it go?" And I said, "It was great." That's all I said. And then we went out and had an early cocktail hour. But I called the race director on Monday, and he basically looked at some film and they had pictures of me running different spots, and he ended up re-qualifying me. And so I really learned a lot that day too, not to overreact and to keep things in balance. Why was I doing this? I was doing this for fun. I was doing this to be on a journey. And finally, after all those years, I had increased my maturity and my time span and was able to have a better view. And but often entrepreneurs chase these, I call them shiny lures. They are like when you're doing the marathons, or maybe it's a side business. A lot of entrepreneurs have a couple of things going. And sometimes it creates them being dragged in places they didn't mean to be dragged. And so, earlier I was talking to you about that primary aim and how important it is to list the things that are important to you. Like I'm happily married, something I want to be. It isn't always a piece of cake, as you know. If you're married, it's not always all honeymoons and roses. It sometimes can be tough, and sometimes you're the tough. But at any rate, I remember in 2018, I did an Ironman. So that was on my primary aim as well. I wanted to do an Ironman. So I did an Ironman in 15 hours and 7 minutes. First, you're happy you did it. Then you're like, 7 minutes. Damn. 7 minutes and I'd be a whole new category. So I wanted to go back and do an Ironman and knock off 7 minutes. I was going to knock it off the marathon, I figured. But anyway, I was going to try to break 15 hours. And I was telling group of friends that that's what my plan was. And my wife pulled me aside and she said, I just wanted to tell you one thing. I have no intention of being an Iron Man's wife. Okay. Discipline for me. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that much fun anyway. Until I immediately shut my mouth up and dropped my ambitions to do that, to stay happily married. And the reality of it is that so many decisions that you go through life like that, where you forget the things that are important to you because of the heat of the moment. And so that primary aim exercise is so important. Even now, I'm writing primary aims that talk about 3 years from now when I'm fully retired. What are you doing, Kev? I don't want to have white space. I want to have a plan. I want to have hobbies and some work activities. I want to be happily married. And I want to be fit. I want to be healthy. I want to maintain my body weight. All the things that I reminded myself by writing it down, so that I can live my life with that clarity. And doing the same for your business is just so important. So when you grow this type of business, it's so incredibly rewarding. It's more rewarding than money or fame or anything. To build something that you built with your family and your friends and your coworkers, to build something so remarkable that runs so well is literally the dream of every entrepreneur. And to build it, it's great because it's every adjective you can think of. It's thriving, it's growing, it's exciting. The employees are engaged, it's their company, they feel it. You benefit the community in countless ways. I mean, I know corporations get bad, sometimes big corporations in particular, get a bad rap, but boy, a company is creating value for everybody. Family and lives are changed forever. Profitable, growing, amazing customer service. When you have that dialed into your operating system, you'll have a great life. And if you build it, everybody in your life and community will win. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Thank everybody. Sell the book. Go and sell the book. Basically, my short-term plans, and also take up hobbies and things like that. I've recently taken up painting, no pun intended. Painting, plein air. So hiking out to a mountain, painting what you see. Not particularly good at it, but I'm enjoying it. So that's the main thing.
Well, when did you start that planning, Kevin?
What's that?
When did you start planning for your succession?
So about 7 years ago, I documented all my book with timelines and everything because I felt it was important that everybody knew what my plan was. So as soon as I became kind of certain about it, I originally wrote a primary aim where I indicated that I thought one of my management team members could take over for me. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago. And that's exactly what's happening now. So, so you start with the rudimentary planning and then you dial it in.
Do you have any sort of board of directors or sounding board that help?
No, I have a pretty sizable management team now that includes the 4 managers and the 3 of my children,
Yeah.
3 out of 4. But we're going to transition into, as I move out, into a board. But I want my kids to be involved in the selection of the folks.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones, passing a business on isn't as fun as it sounds to people getting it. It's a lot of hard work, sacrifice. There's a lot of pride, but it really is, it's a little bit of mental responsibility as well. And so I'm very cognizant about how they'll accept it all.
Do the kids want the business?
They do.
They don't
Yeah.
want-
Yeah, they do. I never for a moment thought they would be in the business, but they gravitated to it because it was fun and exciting. Yeah, they saw places for themselves in it and they take a lot of pride in it. So, but my management team is currently running the company, my children are below them. And eventually my management team will age out and then my children will probably go to the position.
Definitely a long-term plan. Very
But
good. That's a great long-term plan.
Yeah, it works. Basically, you have to figure the way out of the business. You can get in, but getting out's another story. Anything else? Any questions? Any questions online?
We do have one online question. Mark Johnson compliments your presentation. He found it very inspiring. And he asks, can you tell us about Nolan Consulting? What does Nolan Consulting do and for whom do you do it?
So we mostly work with contractors, mostly painting contractors, but not all. We do have some other businesses as well. As you know, much of the things I talked about here apply to all businesses, not just contracting or painting business. They're universal. But small business and entrepreneurs, giving them an operating system. You've heard of like scaling up or EOS, their operating systems. Organizational muscle is an operating system with hopefully answers to most of the day-to-day common problems that you would have, the regular meetings necessary, the business planning that's required, all the structure that you need to have. And defined and written and shared. But Nolan Consulting, we're located in Ardmore. Yeah, a lot of great clients.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That's good.
As you built your business,
Yeah.
Obviously you listen to a lot of management folks.
Yeah.
Did you use outside consultants? Did you use that?
Oh, yeah.
Those type of things?
Absolutely, yeah. In the knowledge game, you have to find where you get answers, and a lot of times that would come from my first business plan. We did that for a couple of years, and then we ended up doing our own. So, but yeah, I've had sales training and leadership training, and even now we hire outside consultants to bring in fresh ideas. So, yeah, throughout the years. Thank you. If you need answers, you got to find them.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.